Hello and welcome to the 2 Minute Drill podcast. I'm Michael Rochman. That's Saavaidra over there. And today we're talking about defensive backs and top cornerbacks and the top safeties in the 2025 NFL draft. And there are plenty of them. We got 16 guys on the agenda that we're going to be talking about today. But before we dive into any of it, Saavaidra, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right. It's a nice, cool evening.
Yeah, it's definitely getting there. Football season starting up. We're recording this on Thursday night, so some of the games already happened, but
Mhm.
all the scouting is based mostly on 2023 stuff. We may mention some of the games, but overall, we're just talking about what we saw over our summer scouting process. And without further ado, I mean, we might as well dive into these cornerbacks. And the first cornerback on the agenda is Tacario Davis, our 10th ranked guy out of Arizona, a massive 6'4" frame, 200 pounds, a guy that can really cover great ground with his stride length and just has the playmaking ability and size that's obviously going to intrigue a lot of scouts when watching Arizona and turning on that Wildcats defense. But I think there is also some issues when it comes to trying to mirror on the outside. He plays the boundary well, but I feel like there's just consistent problems when it comes to trying to effectively work deep and not get stacked upon whenever it comes to the downfield passing attack. I think he has the stride length and speed to keep up, but there were too many times where he allowed his defender to get that over the shoulder type of opportunity for him. And as a result, it just left way too many opportunities that I think solid NFL quarterbacks are going to consistently take advantage of. And then when it came to that kind of underneath quick passing game, I think that's where a lot of major issues came out with the hips and footwork for Tacario Davis. So, I mean, I think there's talent there. I think in the right system, he could be intriguing if the physicality continues to improve. He might be a guy that you're seeing in like a Dan Quinn or a Gus Bradley type of defense. But I don't know. There's steps that still need to be made.
Yeah, I think he's like at least a year or two away from really being like a major prospect if he becomes one. I really think he's like a master of one thing right now. He's really good at the catch point. He's his timing, his ball tracking. He can really get in there and disrupt things, but anytime he has to come underneath, anytime he has to get in run support, he's really bad in run support. He does not do anything as far as stopping the run. And I think just even in press, he's just kind of sloppy with his technique. And it's just, he's not there yet. I think he can get there. The frame's great. The speed is good. I don't think it's great. I think he's probably going to be like a 4-5 flat type of guy at best, but long strider. So he covers ground quickly. So just really, I think it's maybe more of a 2026 for him, for me.
Yeah, and for some guys, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that refinement still needs a lot of work. And at the college level, that's where you're really going to have more investment into really kind of getting that confidence and boost of on field experience. Whereas in the NFL, they maybe not going to have that same patience. So moving forward now to number 9 on our list, and that is Ricardo Hallman, the cornerback for Wisconsin, who turned in an impressive 7 interception season in 2023. Definitely something that's going to capture the attention of many. He's a guy that's 5'10", 185 pounds. And I think the production maybe was a little fluky. And I think as the year went along, I think he started hunting out interceptions, trying to force those turnovers more, which some defensive coordinators and coaches kind of love that approach. But I think it also led to some issues where there were some really easy mistakes that kind of happened because he was kind of greedy for trying to find the football in the air. And that happens. But the size is a little bit of a concern. I'm not sure about the level of athlete that he is. But overall, I thought there was a lot of nice instinctual moments on tape. And I think when he was playing more naturally, kind of letting the interceptions come to him, there was a lot more solid product and consistency in his coverage. I like a lot of the traits. I like a lot of the small things that Hallman does right, especially for the Big Ten, where maybe there weren't a lot of highly volatile passing attacks that he was going against week in, week out. I felt like he was a consistent kind of terrorizing machine for offenses that were already struggling against air, it seems. So I don't know. There was a lot to like about Hallman, but there's definitely still some improvement. And I think in 2024, if he can kind of show that he does more of the small things right, maybe the number drops of interceptions, but he still continues to show that growth and consistency at cornerback. I think he could be a name that we're talking about in this class.
Yeah, he's another guy that I feel like right now is maybe not quite there. He's way too aggressive. You're right. He's always looking to just get a pick and he'll get torched sometimes. I think for his size, he's pretty small. I think he's a good tackler for his size. I think he's pretty good at just getting guys to the ground. He's not going to hit anybody with like any sort of real punch, but I think he moves well. I think his speed is good. I think his fluidity is good. I don't think either one is like special, but I think if he can really refine when he makes those aggressive plays and tries to jump routes and, just pick the ball off and create turnovers. If he can get rid of the bad parts of that, then he'll probably be pretty good. But for right now, I think he's a wait and see.
Yeah, when you're able to do 7 in a season, I mean, it's pretty easy to encourage those
Mm-hmm.
habits. But I think in the NFL, it'll get picked on a little bit more. So it's definitely something to iron out a little bit, get a little bit more discipline going. But he's definitely an exciting college football player, and I'm looking forward to his 2024 campaign. But moving forward to cornerback number 8 on our list, and that's Jahdae Barron, the cornerback for the Texas Longhorns, 5'11", 194 pounds, a guy that kind of operates all over the secondary for the Longhorns. We've seen him line up at safety, at slot corner. We've seen him play some boundary when he was younger and working up into the depth chart. Now he's kind of an established piece for this Longhorn secondary, a piece that, is going to be counted on pretty heavily with the amount of departures that were happening around the Texas Longhorns team. I think he's in for an exciting season. I do think he's a very instinctual player and has that kind of dependability factor. It's just now there's going to be the question of, hey, the Longhorn secondary had plenty of issues. Can Barron be the leader of that unit while they kind of correct those issues and really take those next strides?
Yeah, I think he's he was a lot better than I expected him to be. Because just watching him over the course of the season, I wasn't really impressed, but just actually digging in on the tape, I thought he was pretty good. He's great downhill, just attacking, slipping by a block and just blowing a guy up. I think he's going to probably just be a nickel guy in the NFL. He's always going to be that extra DB, plays either safety or in the slot. I think he's a little penalty prone. I think he's a little too aggressive sometimes. He'll grab guys, he'll trip guys up, he'll kind of get in the mix a little too much. But he's a smart guy and he's a bursty guy, He'll hit people pretty hard. It's just I don't think he's super flexible. And there have been other not super flexible guys in the same mold who have not really worked out lately.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think he's kind of similar. I don't want to throw out Brian Branch because he was like one of the more higher touted slot prospects, and
Mm-hmm.
he has just really hit the ground running in the NFL. But I think he's in that same type of mold where it's like he's not necessarily going to wow you with his athleticism or have this like tremendous like just flash play, but that dependability to kind of plug him into a secondary and know he's going to contribute for the few spots that you can put him in. I mean, sometimes that's all you need to really kind of stick around in the NFL, and it wouldn't shock me if Barron's able to kind of carve out a career because of it.
Yeah, I think he'll probably be in the NFL for a good amount of time.
Yeah, so now moving forward to our 7th ranked cornerback, and that is Cobee Bryant, the cornerback for the Kansas Jayhawks. 6', 170 pounds is the expected measurements. He's a guy that I really liked. I had him a little bit higher than you did, but overall, I mean, I think the traits are kind of undeniable when it comes to what you do like about him. He has 9 picks and 15 pass deflections in his career. I think he had some production tonight as well against Lindenwood. But overall, this is someone that just I really like his ability to play on the boundary. I think he works with nice pacing and control to where he's able to make a play on the ball pretty consistently. He times himself well to where he's staying balanced and getting up into the air, high pointing the football, really closing out the catch point downfield. And I think he has the length and athleticism to mirror his assignment underneath. I think this is one of the better boundary cornerbacks in college football and one of the more polished guys, especially. And I think that type of polish with a year still to go to kind of continue to grow and refine his game is something that I kind of look for in summer. I know for a lot of it, I'm usually preaching about how much I buy into the potential. But when guys have some of the small things like taken care of, and I feel pretty comfortable in that regard, and I feel like I can throw them out there and depend on them to cover some quality cornerbacks, and I know they're going to get another year of continued strength development, adding on some weight. That's where I really get excited about some of these guys. And I think Cobee Bryant has that to offer. But you're a little bit lower on him than I am. So what were your thoughts on watching him?
Yeah, I think I'm actually probably pretty considerably lower. I think he's just way too skinny. I think it's similar to like Emmanuel Forbes, where he's just too skinny. He's going to get knocked around too much for me. I think he does time things well. I do think he has a really solid football. I feel like he's a mind games player. I feel like he's always playing some kind of mind game with whoever he's covering, where he'll just do little things to get under their skin all the time and make them make mistakes. And then he takes advantage of those by, picking the ball off or getting to it. I don't think he's actually that. I don't think I think he's as good as you do at the catch point and actually disrupting things. I think he struggles a little bit there at just staying stuck on and actually getting his hand in because he is really thin. He's very, very light.
Yeah, he's someone that's going to have to hit the weight room a little bit, both during his final season with the Jayhawks and as he enters into the NFL draft. And probably for a year or two as he gets into the NFL, he's going to have to continue to work at it. But I don't know. I really like the flash, and I think he's an exciting player. But
Yeah.
moving forward now to our next cornerback on the board, and that is Denzel Burke, one of these surprising returnees from last year's Ohio State team, because there were so many talented players that decided to kind of run it back for the Buckeyes in an attempt to maybe potentially win the national championship this year. Burke, probably one of the bigger headliners for me. I think he's number 2 on the list in terms of just the importance. I think Tyleik Williams is probably the best player of the returning guys for that defensive side of the football. But for me, Burke's number 2. I think he's someone that plays a little aggressive. So, I mean, there's some times where he gets out of position pretty easily, but I really like his athleticism, his burstiness. And I think that fight in his coverage is something that you're willing to kind of gamble on and, take the good and the bad, because there's so many times where it results in good plays. He's someone that, he's been a starter for the Buckeyes since I think his true freshman season, and the Buckeyes secondary was awful. Like, don't get me wrong, there were some really bad moments, but I always felt like Burke was kind of the guy that was always continuing to show flashes and really kind of showed improvement from year to year. He had a down sophomore season, and I do think there was some valid criticisms with that, but I think a lot of people were quick to write him off and be like, oh yeah, the secondary was bad, Burke was bad, and he's just bad now. But he really bounced back strongly, really showed what he can be as a cornerback. And I think now, as Ohio State has kind of elevated themselves from a very good defense to probably one of the best defenses in the country, arguably maybe number 1. I don't know. George has a lot to say about that, I'm sure. But I think there's just a lot to like about Burke, and I think he's someone that can really be dependable at the college level. And I think in the NFL, there's some exciting traits that is potentially going to get him in the first round.
Yeah, I think he could get up to the first round. I think he's like a roller coaster for me, where that first year as a freshman was good and technique was advanced for freshmen. And last year was like it just disappeared. Like the technique was so all over the place. I don't know if it was just learning the defense again. I don't know what it was. And then this year things clicked. But I think he's like just kind of good at everything. When his technique is working, he's tremendous. He's a great player. But even now, it just kind of comes and goes. And he's really risk averse, I feel like. Like he's never looking to create any turnovers. He's not really putting himself out there ever at any point and putting himself in danger.
Yeah, and sometimes when you have that like confidence where you've kind of built yourself up in a system and established yourself as a star for it, I think sometimes you can kind of stop overthinking the technique. And maybe as a freshman, when he was overthinking it a little bit, it helped him kind of stick to the basics, and it helped him, kind of establish himself. But I think now where he's really kind of an established, trusted starter of this team, maybe it's kind of easier to think less about like making sure he sticks to the script. And maybe as a result, there's been some technique issues, but still a very good cornerback. And the Ohio State Buckeyes are very thrilled to have him back in what is a loaded secondary for Ohio State heading into 2024. But moving forward now to the next cornerback on our list, and that is Mansoor Delane, the cornerback for Virginia Tech. 6'1", 190 pounds. I actually had him as my second ranked corner. I thought he was really nice with just his instincts and pacing when it came to working downfield. And that ability to kind of stick with your defender as you operate vertically or across the field is something that I really value in cornerbacks. And I think Delane is just someone that has that ability in his tool set. He's got great size, great physicality, but also just doesn't get outside of himself too often. He's very controlled and composed in his play. And I think that kind of just consistency and maturity when you're operating in traffic and, operating against some deadly weapons in the passing game, it's important to kind of continue to show that you're sticking to what and, kind of staying controlled, staying composed. And I think he does that extremely well.
Yeah, I think for him, for me, the issue is just the fall off and production, like ball production this year. Like he went from, he had like 8 pass breakups as a freshman, and then this year he had 1. And I felt like for me, he gets bounced pretty easy. I don't think he looks terribly fluid. I think his footwork is good, and I think the speed control is really good, and I think that's what really lets him stick to guys so well. But I think when it comes to actually like turning, it's tough. Like I think getting back onto a guy if he gets shaken is tough. I think his press ability is really good for for a sophomore, and for being a guy who is a little thinner and who isn't like a super bulky 6'1" guy. He's more of like a thin body guy, but there are guys in that league with his build that make it work. And I think he could easily rise like up for me, like a lot higher.
Yeah, and he was someone that really impressed me in the Florida State game where he was operating against even Johnny Wilson, but also Keon Coleman, where both guys are just massive receivers. And it was something where he was able to stick with them. neither were really like route technicians. So it wasn't necessarily that they were cutting across the field on these great slant routes or amazing digs where they were hesitating and then kicking back inside. But he was just able to kind of stay in their pocket, really disrupt the catch point consistently against them. And, those big body receivers, it's hard to sometimes win at the catch point. And I feel like he did a great job of doing it on a routine basis to where Jordan Travis wasn't as effective when targeting them. But moving forward now to the next cornerback on our board, and that's Shavon Revel, the cornerback for East Carolina, a guy that is 6'3", 200 pounds, great size, great frame. You're very high on him, so I'm going to let you go ahead and take the lead. Saavaidra, what are your thoughts on him?
Well, I wouldn't say I'm like super duper high on him. I'm like round 2 high on him right now. I think he's kind of like, what if Tacario Davis had like ironed out like a whole bunch of parts of his game that need ironed out right now? His length is great. His timing's really good. He's really fluid for his size and his body control. He's he like worms his way in and makes tackles like in the mix. Like he really sifts through stuff to get to people. I don't think he really can read the QB at all right now, which is kind of weird. He's more of just like the ball has entered my realm of influence. I'm going to make a play on it now, as opposed to anticipating and jumping a route or something. But I also think he's just like a really nasty guy. Like he'll just get nasty with his hands downfield.
Yeah, he's someone that he plays with his eyes away from the quarterback, which for a long time I thought was like a really big problem. But I've kind of learned that it's not as big of a problem as long as it's like sort of how they're coached up. So I don't want to fault him too much, but I do think there are times where he's depending on that, where he's letting the receiver get past him and he's saying, okay, I'm going to play where I'm chasing them down. And once the ball is in my vision, I'm going to make a play on it. But there's going to be times where, there's a good QB and a good receiver that just is going to pick on that and is going to be able to kind of exploit that. And I don't think he's fluid enough to where working back to the football is not going to get him in trouble with like the defense pass interference situation. And
I do think working back is going to be an issue.
Yeah, so it's just something where it's not that I think like he shows great flashes. Like I think the potential's there, and I think he has like the skill set and the ball skills and instincts, like you said, to where I trust him to make that play consistently. But it's just those small things where I'm like, man, this dominates at college, but at the NFL level, there's a big jump and there's big transitions that you have to make that maybe this type of play style isn't necessarily going to work. So when he's changing up his play style, changing up what he's relying on consistently, are there going to be more issues that kind of pop up? And I think that's harder to necessarily buy into compared to some of the other cornerbacks in this class, but I still see the upside. I still see the skill set. And I think this is just, it's so easy to buy into a great athlete that has great size, but at the same time, he has the instincts and ball skills that you're looking for, to where this could very easily be someone that we're later on talking about. And we're like, yeah, we never should have overthought him. He was the obvious cornerback one in this class, or maybe not in this class, but he was an obvious star in this class. So I don't know. There's still a lot to like about Revel.
Mm-hmm.
So moving forward now to cornerback number 3, and that's Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame, 6 foot, 186 pounds. He's a guy that has started for the Fighting Irish for about 2 seasons now. I believe this is entering his true junior year. What were your thoughts on watching him for the Fighting Irish? I know you are a Notre Dame fan.
This guy loves to play in coverage. He loves nothing more than just locking a guy up and making him disappear for a whole game. He doesn't really care about run defense that much at all, or making any plays outside of coverage. But when it comes to just, there's a guy I have to get rid of, I'll get rid of him, and he just does that over and over again. I think he's a pretty good athlete. I don't think he's a great athlete. I think he's really, what's great for him is the footwork's as good as it gets. The technique is so advanced. It's so good for just him being such a young player that it just erases guys, and guys just go away. You make a guy go away. That's the type of player he is.
Yeah, he's very impressive in terms of just the overall like toolkit and just what you can see in terms of traits. The only issue that I really have for him, and it's not necessarily like something that I'm, out on him for, it's just kind of nitpicking stuff, but there were a lot of moments where I felt like he would get a little over ambitious with his coverage, and it resulted in some issues where guys could kind of break off of him and he was left kind of stranded in space. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I want a cornerback that's just so confident one-on-one in space, and the coaches are saying, yeah, we have Morrison out there. Like, I don't care who else is, like, put him on the other side of the field because we know Morrison's going to handle it.
Just forget about it. He's over there.
But it's one of those things where I'm like, man, I hope that he ends up in a situation where a coach at the NFL level is more patient with him and allows him to kind of grow into that like number one role, because we saw like Okuda where he was kind of put on Stephon Diggs early and it just resulted in him getting toasted and the confidence never recovered from that point. And I'm not saying Okuda would have just been the star no matter what, as long as he was coached right. But sometimes getting in those situations, so much of it is just that confidence and that consistency, play to play, to where you're able to build up that routine of like dominating opposing wideouts. And if he's put in that situation early where he's operating against guys that are like Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams type of route runners, he's going to be in some trouble just because of how overambitious he is. So he's someone that I do want to kind of take those steps, be a little bit more hesitant when it comes to that development. But I still really like him, and I think he's someone that's going to be heard in the first round come draft day.
Yeah, easily, I think.
Yeah, so now moving forward to number 2. And, I'd say these top 3 guys are kind of in a tier of their own when it comes to this cornerback position.
Yeah, I do too.
Number 2, the Shohei Ohtani of football, Travis Hunter out of Colorado, 6 foot, 180 pounds, plays wide receiver for the Colorado Buffaloes, plays cornerback, does excellent at both. You could really kind of evaluate him at either position, and you feel pretty comfortably that he's going to be a contributor in the NFL. What are your thoughts on Hunter, and do you think he's someone that can continue this two-way play in the NFL?
I think he probably could. I don't know if he should. I feel like maybe picking a focus would be more to his benefit in terms of just down the line. But if he can play both equally well, he's going to make a really large amount of money. That's obscenely large, which is probably what he wants, and what any player would want. So he's probably cross-training both. He just had a great game tonight. He had 130 yards and 3 touchdowns. But I would say with him, it's just physicality that he really needs to get better at. He's just he's not super strong. He's a thinner guy. He has good height. He's another guy like Delane, who's 6'1" and like 180, 185 probably, who just needs to get stronger. Even as a receiver, it's just, he kind of can get bodied if he's not in space.
Yeah, he's someone that I think the play IQ, play recognition, processing, and instincts are all just like off the charts, to where
way up here.
It's why you almost have to put him at cornerback right now, because like this type of skill set is so like rare. And at wide receiver, he's good, but I just think there's so many like dominant receivers to where it's kind of easy to be like, oh yeah, he's good, but like I've seen good receivers, But at corner, like even some of the best corners, it's hard to like kind of see it on tape so consistently week in, week out, where like they're just showing off these like great mental plays where you're like, holy cow, this guy's next level.
Yeah.
Even like Ahmad Gardner, who was amazing in college, it was like they just didn't throw at him, so you didn't see it as much. Whereas like they're trying Hunter, they are consistently seeing if they can throw on Hunter, and it goes wrong for the most part. The issue for Hunter last year, in my mind, obviously physicality, there's questions of that, but the season-long fatigue is definitely an issue, and that's going to be the big thing that holds up if he can play both ways. Can he kind of break that next level, keep up the endurance where he's continuing to provide 95% to 100% every week at both positions? Because if he's starting out at 100% at both positions and then he's playing around like 65% stamina at both spots, like he's dropping like big plays. And that's what happened against Stanford. Like he's starting to get cooked downfield. And I don't think that happens routinely if he's playing like strictly cornerback all season. I think just the wear and tear kind of takes its effect. Not to be too biased by the college video game, but that's a good terminology for it. So I don't know. It's just something that I think if he continues to work on his conditioning and just gets that like elite tier to where he's like, oh man, it's like Stephen Curry workouts where he's just like wearing bags of weights to like push in on his lungs so he has a harder time breathing, and then on the field he's next level. I don't know, just something like that. I think he can absolutely do it. The skill set's there to where he's such a good contributor at wide receiver and corner, but I just think he's so elite at cornerback to where I want him there. But it wouldn't shock me if he chooses to be a wide receiver, and I still think he's like probably first round guy, or if he's someone that maybe a coach says like, okay, we just want him at corner and he's not going to be a wide receiver, or maybe he's someone that's selectively kind of rotating at both spots and contributing as needed for a team. And I don't know, it's going to be interesting. I do think this is probably one of the closer situations to a two-way player. I know Miles Jack had some conversation about it. That's probably like the most recent instance, but even Miles Jack, I didn't think was that level of running back as Hunter is at wide receiver and corner. So I'm really excited. It's going to be hard for a coach to kind of turn down that type of upside and potential. And it really could kind of elevate his stock where he is one of the first picks off the board because he's providing a starting caliber player at two positions. But I I don't know. It's something that we just kind of have to wait and see and really hear from the NFL what they think. But it wouldn't shock me if he's able to be like a two-way player and a star when doing so.
Yeah, he's going round one either way. His route running's too good as a wide receiver to not go round one, and his mental game, like you said, is too good as a corner to not go round one. He's smarter than the other team's quarterbacks in college, so he knows what they're doing before they do.
Yeah, he's an absolute stud. And, one more absolute stud, our number one cornerback out of Michigan, Will Johnson, 6'2", 200 pounds, a guy that has also started since his true freshman season. It's just been an absolute shutdown cornerback ever since. He's been someone that has been tasked with guarding guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., guarding other elite wideouts in the college football level, and he's usually pretty consistently done pretty well. Obviously, you're never going to win 100% of the time when you're going against some of these guys, but Will Johnson has been tried and tested, and he has shown that he has the upside and ability to continue that at the NFL level. I think there's really not much you can question about him. I think the fluidity and physicality is there. The size is great. The speed and athleticism is there. He's someone that checks almost every box. When a guy like Harbaugh, who has that NFL pedigree, is so like willing to trust him as a true freshman, it's hard to be like, no, probably not. Like that's probably the floor. Wherever the Chargers pick, like Harbaugh wouldn't care. He'd just say, yeah, bring me Johnson. So he's someone that is going to be such a stud in the NFL. And I'm really excited to see what he can do because, it gets a little easier when you're playing with a defensive line that has like some of the greatest defensive tackles you've ever seen at the college level. But still, this is someone that just is handling business, play in and play out. And that's what you really can ask for out of your corner.
Yeah, he's pretty much the ideal size and athleticism you want out of a corner. He's a little like I've heard him compared to Surtain a lot. He's kind of like that, but just like a little bit smaller, just like a teeny bit, like 5 pounds lighter and maybe like a half inch shorter arms and like an inch shorter height. With him, I think the only issue I had with him was like after it on the rare occasions he allows a catch, he's not great at tackling the guy sometimes and preventing yards afterwards. He plays a little smaller than his size sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's fair. He's someone that definitely has like, I think not necessarily weight to gain, but I think just continuing to add some muscle to his frame would be nice. You obviously don't want to add too much, but I think he's someone that could pretty easily get to like 210, and it wouldn't really be sacrificing any athleticism just because his frame is still a little thin. I think getting that and just continuing to improve as a tackler will definitely help limit some of the production on the outside. But so much of it comes from coverage already that you can't really even ask for too much more. But I don't know if we're nitpicking him, I definitely agree. Like there's still some growth, but he's an exciting guy. It's hard to like not buy into Michigan again as like a playoff team, even though there's so many questions on the offensive side, just because the defense is going to be holding opposing offenses to like 10 points. This is an exciting unit.
I guess it is the Big Ten,
Johnson's
so
the headliner. Yeah,
points.
yeah. 10 points is like the best of the best, and then Iowa's -7 or something. But moving forward to the safeties. So for this safety class, we have 6 guys that we're going to be talking about. And, there's some exciting guys on this class, but I think there's sort of a top elite guy. Then there's this next tier of intriguing pieces. But we're going to start at the bottom. So our 6th ranked guy is going to start out with Iowa's Xavier Nwanpka, a guy that I was a little bit higher on, 6'2", 215 pounds. I think he's got the instincts and versatility to play all over the secondary. And I think especially now in a defense and NFL era, where they are consistently operating in this split zone type of defense, he has that strong safety value where he's able to crash down on the ball and run support, able to pick up and slot defense, and able to offer that range to where he can kind of handle the too high situations. And he's doing so at such an impressive rate to where I think he's someone that you can just routinely rely on. He's a little bit quieter than some of your other defensive backs, and I think that's just sort of the Iowa side effect, but he's someone that I think is just routinely consistent to where you can really kind of trust him for steady play. And at the safety position, that's what it's all about, that insurance and reliability.
Yeah, if you want to lay any blame on why he's the 6th guy or the bottom guy you're talking about, it's me. It's because I had him last out of the 2 of us, and you had him a lot higher. I don't generally go for safeties that aren't really noisy on the stat sheet, and he's not yet. I could just be because Sebastian Castro is really noisy on the stat sheet, and he's doing a lot of the stuff that Nwanpka would just be cleaning up. I do think he's a really good run defender. I do think he's got a great size to him. I think gained a little muscle mass this year. He's a little bit bigger. I do think his athleticism is really good. I just think laterally, I think he's really just clumsy. I don't think I'm not talking like when it's like at an angle in front of him, like a 45-degree angle. I'm talking when it's straight laterally from him. He just doesn't always pick it up. He's a slow reactor for me. He likes to read the play for a long time, and then the reaction comes a little later than it probably should. And I think that's probably why his pass breakup numbers and just general pass play numbers are really low as well.
Yeah, I think I was reading Brugler's safety rankings, and he mentioned that he thought that Nwanpka was kind of sticking too much to play discipline. Sometimes you got to let loose and just like attack the football, and he felt he was playing it a little safe sometimes. So yeah, sometimes making the attempts to try to generate those turnovers can be a lot better than maybe just playing it safe and waiting to stop the ball after it's been caught or whatever. So well, I'm looking forward to seeing if he can take some steps. I think he's going to get some more time now that DeJean's out of the defense. Obviously, the injury kind of took him out a little bit earlier in the season, but I think getting that full off season as like an established part of that secondary, I think it's going to be exciting, and I think he's going to have some opportunities to kind of continue to progress. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's able to take another step forward. But moving forward to our number 5 safety, and that is Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame, a guy that was starting out at wide receiver, and then he moved over to the defensive side of things, and he's made some solid progression. He had 7 interceptions last season, so really exciting type of year for him. I thought that he showed some really nice moments in those interceptions as well, just that ball production and the ability to kind of make plays. He's not necessarily the flashiest of like run defense guys. He's still developing in terms of that consistency as a tackler and just that technique. But I think that's part of the growing process when you move a wide receiver over to the defense side of things. So I kind of like what he's shown in terms of just that play like season to season growth and the development that he's shown so far. I like it. And, having a campaign like 2023 is really easy to buy into, but I understand there's still some steps to take, but it wouldn't shock me if this is someone that just continues to kind of elevate his play and kind of make up those small margins of difference year to year, and eventually is like a very good starting safety in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the former wide receiver bit just really explains pretty much every part of his game. It's why his ball tracking is really good. It's why his tackling is not that good, because it seems like his thinking is just, I've been hit really hard before, so I'm just gonna fly at this guy as fast as I can and hit him, and then he'll just miss sometimes. I think he's not terribly flexible. I think he's a little tight just through the hips and ankles, and maybe he's not gonna fly around as much. I think maybe too high would be better for him than actually playing like deep. I think that he's, obviously he's a little old because he switched from wide receiver. And I feel like the other issue with him is I think quarterbacks are going to manipulate him a lot. I think they're going to look him off and he's going to go flying another direction.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that, he got out of position a little bit too easily. That discipline of sticking into his like general areas, trying to stick to his zones and handling his responsibilities. And maybe part of that is too easily dismissed on my end, just because he's, a former wide receiver. Maybe I'm just giving him too much credit. That'll come. Don't worry, kid. Keep going. But I do think that there is some parts of his game that I think will continue developing and improving. And I think the instinctual side is definitely a part of that. He's continued to add weight. I know he's listed at like 199, but I think he measured in at 203 this offseason. So he's continuing to get a little stronger.
Decently bulky, I think.
Yeah, he's putting on some decent size, and I like the aggression and ball skills. So I don't know. I do think I am giving him maybe a little bit too much leeway on just the fact they changed positions, but I like the fact that he's done that and still been able to be a productive player at a new position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So moving forward now to our next safety, and that is Rod Moore, a strong safety, free safety. He kind of moves around the secondary for the Michigan Wolverines. And this is someone that, when I was watching the Michigan Wolverines defense, I feel like there are so many plays where I'm like, dang, Rod Moore is just consistently like making these moments happen. And then I kind of watched him closer, and I feel like I got a little lower on him. And it's not necessarily that like he was making like bad plays, but I think the fluidity in his movement is a little bit questionable. I don't think he's as natural of an athlete to where he's like got this great like testing kind of projection for him. And I think that can kind of lead to some of these strong safety types kind of falling down the board. But it wouldn't shock me if there's someone that's kind of similar in the mold of like Jordan Fuller, where the dependable plays and like kind of reliability was there. and it was just kind of easy to maybe kind of not notice him in a defense that had so many talented pieces. But then he gets to the NFL and it's like, oh yeah, he's just continuing to do that, and he's still like very steady. So Rod Moore's someone that I do like as like an early day 3, maybe mid day 3 type selection. But I do kind of have some questions about that athleticism, and especially in the summer, we see a lot of safeties where they enter as one of the top names in the class, and then the testing kind of becomes a question, and there's some issues at the combine, and then they completely fall off the map. And Rod Moore is someone that I'm not saying that he's like a terrible athlete. I just think there were times where he looked a little stiffer than I would have liked for a guy that you're ideally wanting to see generate a lot of like coverage snaps or being able to drop deep into zones. And I don't know, there's still some questions there for me that I want to see in 2024.
Yeah, I love the bringing up Jordan Fuller, because what I had written down for him pretty much immediately was he is a great capper for a defense. He's the capstone piece once you've already got all the other ones. I don't think he's a guy you want being one of your main pieces, because I think he'll get exposed pretty bad. I do think the athleticism is just pretty average. He's kind of light, which is weird because he doesn't play like it, but he's also just not. I don't think he should be playing like in man like ever. I think the catch point stuff is not great. He's a really smart guy. I know he's apparently like a really good leader for them, which is always good. Good voice in the locker room. He had the injury earlier this year too, which is probably gonna bring things down a little bit. But I think he'll probably go a little earlier than you're thinking. I think he'll probably go like late round 3 to the
Wouldn't
Chargers.
shock me. I think there's definitely value there. Yeah.
Want him on his team.
Yeah, and Harbaugh already added some safeties this offseason, but I feel like he's willing to add some more if it's a Michigan guy. But
Yeah.
it's something that I do really like Rod Moore, and maybe the injury will help kind of bring back some athleticism and some juice, and we'll see a little bit more fluidity and just ability this season. But he's definitely a dependable player at the college level, and he's going to be a star for the Wolverines this season. And if he can continue that, it's going to probably get him some draft stock, and he'll definitely have an opportunity in the NFL to pave out a role for himself.
Yeah, I would think so.
Now moving forward to our third ranked safety, and that's Nick Emmanwori, the 6'3", listed 225 pounds. I know you have the school numbers. He's a little bit lighter. Defensive back for the South Carolina Gamecocks, kind of works around the secondary and has some nice flashes in those moments. He's an exciting athlete. I had him as my lowest ranked guy. You had him a lot higher, and everyone besides our top guy, like so much discrepancy in our rankings. So I'll let you take the lead on hyping him up a little bit here and tell us what to look out for Emmanwori in 2024.
Well, first of all, he's just like a super giga freak. He's a crazy freak athlete type of guy. I don't think he's a super freak athlete in terms of agility. I don't think those scores are going to be particularly good. And I think there is some fear that he's going to like have that like awesome testing and similar production that puts him in like the Obi Melifonwu, Taylor Mays sphere where he's compared to those two guys. And that'll be a little scary. But I think I first put him on like my radar was when South Carolina played Georgia in 2022, and they just absolutely like Georgia just absolutely boat raced them, and it was not a game at all. He had 14 solo tackles in that. I was like, oh, there's a true freshman safety playing on South Carolina who's 6'4" and had 14 tackles in a game. I'll keep an eye on him. And then this last year, the ball skills developed significantly and the coverage ability developed significantly, and he wasn't playing up by the line so much, and he was doing a lot more in the secondary, a lot more coverage responsibilities developed there, and I thought they were really nice. I thought he's a little awkward. He's really, really awkward, honestly, and they don't blitz him at all, which is weird for the type of athlete he is, because I think he's just not really good working downhill and like slipping past blocks despite his size. He's just kind of awkward. But really, I think just it's a really freaky guy. You could probably play him at both safety spots. Maybe you could play him at corner if you really felt like it. I think a team will probably try that at some point and it'll fail. But I don't know. I just really like him.
Yeah, this is the same school that produced Israel Mukuamu, so they love their long, freaky defensive backs.
So
yeah, he had 2 interceptions, 8 pass deflections last season. This is someone that is very exciting, and the size and intrigue is definitely there. The ball production definitely came forward in 2023. I'm interested to see if he can continue that into 2024, and I think that'll kind of put to rest any doubts about kind of the instincts and processing ability. But I think that aspect is there. The growth was certainly noticeable in 2023, and I think that progression of development will be encouraging if he can do so in 2024. He had a play against Kentucky where he made that interception. I mean, he gets up like 40 inches in the air and makes
Yeah,
a great play
he
on
was
the
way up
ball.
there.
Like,
He
it's a
dropped
freaky
another
play
one.
if you he has some really nice moments to where there's potential. And it's very easy to buy in, and especially in the summer where you're like, yeah, he's got another year to kind of iron out all the wrinkles. This guy's going to be amazing. But like there's a lot of encouraging signs in his play. He has the just like size and length to where you can kind of make him into whatever you choose to, whether he's
Yeah.
kind of weighing in at like 210 or 220. He's someone that, if you add weight to him, he probably could kind of play up closer to the line of scrimmage and still be an impact player because of his instincts and just kind of smarts that I think he does demonstrate pretty consistently for the Gamecocks back deep in the secondary. But I like him a little bit further back to where he can kind of work forward and come down to the football rather than trying to just kind of play at the line and be an impact
Mm-hmm.
close to the line of scrimmage type of guy. I think he's better coming downhill. I think the stiffness is a little weird just because I do think he's a very nice athlete, but I think it's more of like nice stride speed, nice jumping ability, but I don't think he necessarily has the agility. So I'm kind of curious to see how that type of testing kind of comes out whenever the combine comes around. But he's an exciting player, and I think that's someone that it wouldn't shock me if he ends up back in school and he's more of a 2026 guy. But I think there's potential here to where he is someone that is going to be on draft radars, and with the athleticism that we're expecting out of him and we've heard from South Carolina, he's probably going to be someone that really kind of builds up hype once the combine comes around in February.
Yeah, the workout numbers they posted where he's like 228 pounds and has 33-inch arms and benches 24 times and jumps like 42 and then like 11-4 broad jump.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw a lot of draft hype kind of generate from Tyler Owens, who had like his share of issues, a little bit older, and
Mm-hmm.
was probably even a little bit more like unpolished in his play, and
Mm-hmm. Way
that type
more.
of
And
testing,
hey,
even getting injured at the
he made
combine.
the Commanders. He made the
Yeah,
team. So
he made the team, and sometimes it's just like having the combination of traits that a coach can say, okay, now let me like put my fingerprints all over him, and it's gonna just elevate his play. So there's gonna be some coaches who are very much in on him and ready to buy into what they can turn him into, even if there is
mm-hmm.
some ball of clay aspects to his skill set right now.
Yeah.
So now moving forward to our second safety, and that is Kevin Winston Jr., the safety out of Penn State, a strong safety, but someone that I think is very good at just kind of reacting in coverage. And I think he's similar to Nwanpka, who is just so good in terms of the split field type of situation. And as the NFL kind of heads in that direction, I think he's going to be extremely impressive in those cover two looks, or even if you're kind of operating in cover three where he's handling the middle and you have your cornerbacks kind of handling the boundary parts. He has the range and athleticism to cover in that regard, but he also crashes downhill very well. And I think he's a very good tackler. He can make some big hits. 6'1", 205 pounds, so he's got the frame and size to kind of make those impact plays. He's just very comfortable. I think he's another guy that I really love his pacing and composure when he's in his place. He definitely is a bit aggressive when it comes to attacking downhill to where he can kind of miss with his angles and sometimes work himself out of the play a little bit. But I think it's more just because of his just like aggression more so than like him making the wrong read as much. So I think that part will continue to kind of work itself out. But I don't know. He's play to play. I think he's just such a stud, and I think he's one of the better strong safeties in this class. The top guy is probably the best like overall safety, but if you're looking for someone who can kind of be that like Xavier McKinney type of physical safety that can also kind of drop into coverage as you need him, I think Winston's someone that can kind of fill that role, and it wouldn't shock me if he's a very like solid contributor to his secondary in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm a little lower on him right now just because like I mean, there's like the reports where it's like he's never missed a tackle ever. It's like, whoa, he never missed a tackle ever. And I watch it and it's like he's doing like the Wario shoulder bash to take guys down. And it's like that's not gonna work in the NFL. And he's got all these like weird bad habits where like he doesn't ever turn around to play the ball. Like he will commit PI a billion times a game if a guy gets by him. And it's like that just needs to go away. I think if it goes away, he's really good. And it's like that's an easy like second round pick at least. Because the athleticism is good. The frame is pretty much perfect. It's exactly what you want. It's just the habits are not good for me. Like just I don't want to see any more arm bars. I don't want to see him grabbing people by their shoelaces because he lunged too early. I don't want to see him doing the Wario shoulder bash. And I really want to just see him stop hitting guys too early or jumping on them without turning to play the ball first.
Yeah, and this is a year where I think he especially is going to have more important, like more focus needed in the coverage aspect, just because the front seven's there for Penn State. Like they have some
Mm-hmm.
impressive edge rushers with Abdul Carter and Danny Nance Sutton, who, if you want to hear about, you can check out the top edge ranked rushers in the draft class that we recorded yesterday and posted. But overall, I mean, this is someone that I think has the ability to make plays in coverage. The athleticism is there, the fluidity is there to kind of match guys and mirror them as you need from the safety position. But it's just something where he kind of needs to take those steps in refinement to where he can really establish himself as a top guy in this class. But I think it's a very open race for that kind of second safety spot. I will say that,
Super open. Yeah.
number one's probably taken. And I wouldn't be shocked if it kind of stays with one guy. But I think that second spot is wide open. I think Winston's a very good contender for it.
Yeah. It's going to end up being some surprise. It's going to be like Ike Larson from like Utah State or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So, number one guy, we've kind of been hinting at it, but we didn't name drop. We did a good job avoiding spoilers here. But Malaki Starks, safety out of Georgia, just does it all for the Bulldogs. Another 6'1", 205-pound guy that, you can see him working at the slot, at free safety, at strong safety. He does it all. He was kind of rotating around with Bullard last year with one of the better safety tandems in the entire college football country. And he's going to return, whereas Bullard is now heading to Green Bay this season. Starks really kind of does it all, and I think he's probably one of the more anticipated safeties. It's a position that, there's definitely questions about the overall value that teams are putting into it. And this offseason, we saw over $100 million in cap shed from the position alone because, guys like Justin Simmons, who are high-end safeties, were just being cut because, like, hey, we can get 85% of this play from a guy that's like $14 million cheaper or whatever. So it's tough to kind of project where the safety will be valued in the NFL, but it's similar to running back where, maybe they're able to kind of see value in that if it's the right team. But there's also a lot of teams who are going to wait until day two to kind of fill in that position. So what's your expectations for where Starks can end up in the draft? And, what type of player do you think he is?
I think he can go top 15, and I don't really see any flaws with his game whatsoever, honestly. I think from day one as a true freshman on Georgia, he was immediately like one of the best players in the country. I really like he has a bad play like every once in a while, but like so does every player. It's like there's no consistent pattern to his any issue he ever has. So it's just he's got the ideal size. He's a great athlete. He's super smart. He can play literally anywhere in the secondary. So it's just like I don't know. It's just that's just it. As for safety, it's my favorite position. It makes me really sad that the NFL has decided that they don't care about safety and that they're just gonna continue to like draft like weird random guys that test kind of well and let Cameron Kinchins fall to like the third round. Maybe he'll end up being awful. I don't know. I don't think he will, but like just who else ran like a 4.6? Justin Simmons ran a 4.6.
Yeah, it's weird because I understand it, especially at the strong safety spot. I do think that it's kind of easier to get a hit rate on guys more in that day 3, day 2 range. But I think Starks has the versatility where he can be like a Derwin James type of impact player where you're loving what he can do out of that strong safety spot. And we've seen guys get big contracts where it's not necessarily all done. Like Kyle Duggar just inked a new deal with the Patriots. McKinney just signed a new deal with Green Bay this offseason. And I will say maybe that's a little bit of luxury thanks to the roster construction that they have where everyone is really kind of cheap right now on the Packers roster to where they just said, we need a great safety to kind of take this roster to the next level. But I don't know. It's a weird situation, but I think in the right spot with the right roster that's just saying, hey, we need an impact player on this defense, you can see that kind of impact kind of take place. And I think one person that it's not necessarily a comparison, but Jesse Bates with Atlanta, the impact that he had moving to free safety where they were just struggling with their secondary. I think that type of play, when you add an elite level player in the backside, it's huge for a defense. Kyle Hamilton has been probably one of the most valuable defensive players in the league. And yes, Baltimore has a lot of great like players surrounding him, but I mean, there are a lot of teams who, if they could do it over, they would have definitely taken Hamilton over who they picked, or maybe even better than some of their like good players that they picked. They still would have preferred Hamilton. So it's hard to say because a player like Starks, has a skill set and has the potential to be a high impact player to where, yes, positional value, maybe safety's a little lower on the board, but if you're getting a star player at this position, like it's very hard to say, oh, positional value, because you want stars on the field, and those stars are going to help you win games on Sundays.
Yeah, I mean, I would take a running back top 22, so I don't care. If a running back
Yeah,
is
we're
like
old school here, 2-minute drill.
yeah, if it's Jonathan Taylor, there's a Jonathan Taylor type prospect. I had Jonathan Taylor as a top 10 prospect in his draft. If there's a guy like him, I'm going to take him top 15. I don't care. That's a really valuable piece.
I think you have to draft good players. And I understand like playing the board a little bit. And if you think there's like a deeper position or a position that's easier to hit on later, I get it. But at the same time, like there are guys who break those rules that you have to kind of be willing to adapt for. And I think Starks kind of fits that mold.
Yeah, I think he fits it pretty well just because he's just good at everything. And you won't have to worry about him at all.
Yeah, so that's all for the top safeties and cornerbacks of the 2025 NFL draft class. Later today, we will have the sleepers video being posted where we talk about some guys that maybe didn't make the top 15 of the consensus ranks, but guys that we think could make some noise in this upcoming season. Until then, though, that's Saavaidra. I'm Michael Rochman, and that's the 2-minute drill. Thanks for tuning in.